Colombian. I grew up in Colombia. My mom is American, so I grew half of my childhood I did it in New York. That's why I have like a kind of good English, but you'll see I have a lot of words that I lack because I don't use it that much. And I grew up in Bogota, so I speak Spanish. And at age 20, I went to Paris to live in Paris because I was like, wow, the place you all want to be. I'm an architect, so I'm going to be in Paris. So from the last 20 years, I have been in Paris working. And when I had children myself, I was like thinking, where you do have to put them in school in Paris. People don't think it's something else. So where can I put them in schools? And I discovered Montessori education and then democratic education. And then I start building schools, trying to think that even though we have another system, even though we have a new system, we're thinking schools and education, we don't think about space. And I don't know how it is working, so, okay. So we are changing education. We know that it has an impact on children. But what do we do about places, the place where we educate? So, the baby. That's where we all come from. We all have been there. And babies, we know it very well, don't need nothing to learn how to walk. They just do it. They just go on and walk. It's like magic. What is it about that? Is that the brain is connected, is wired to learn. We love to learn. We want to learn. That's the way we live in the environment. So, what is the problem? Where do the schools and the buildings we have today for schools, where do they come from? Somebody knows?
Prisons.
Yeah. Can you say it louder?
Prisons.
Very good. Prisons. All the educational system was invented at the same time as prisons. Is the same person that thought about prisons and how to control people and dominate people and how to build schools. So this is a good example. This is a prison. How do you control it? You do small spaces. You have centers of power. Can I? You have centers of power. Yes, I can have it. Oh, yeah. So you have centers of power, and you have small spaces, and everybody's looking to the same place. That's you. You're all looking at you. That's a power space. Okay? This one. The same power space. Okay? This is kind of our space today. You just cut it in half, and we have our space. Everybody's looking at the same center. And everybody knows Foucault. Foucault is the one that started telling us prisons have this power, the power of controlling us. We cannot be like thinking it's just, oh, that's the way it is. No, they were taught to control people. And it's a power of, it's a mechanism of power that is used to do them. And this is a picture of a prison. You can see the control tower and all the rooms that are looking. And what is this? Mall. Malls are constructed exactly in the same way. You have little spaces, you get lost, and when you get to malls, you just want to buy. Because they turn down your defenses. When you get to malls, you just wanted to buy, I don't know, pencil, and you finish buying a computer. Why? How do they do that? Because they're thinking about space. They know. And malls all over the world have the same structure. That's why all of you knew this was a mall structure. The power structure, big spaces, so I can feel small. I am nothing. They know everything. And little structures, so I can go and get shelter and feel insecurity. And then I buy because they're helping me feel insecurity about the big space. So where do we come from? We come from babies, yeah, but long ago, where were we? Who were we? So we come from Africa. And we're in Africa. What's the landscape in Africa? Savannah. Yeah. Can you imagine that we are wired to look at savanna places? We love savanna places. There are people in neuroscience telling us that human beings are going to look for mad coats that have the same structure as savanna landscapes. Okay? This is called the savanna environment. We want a savanna. We want to go back to that mythical space. We don't know it, but our brains do know it because we evolved to look for those places because there was the good places we can really live in. So when I show you a picture like this one, okay, it was a power space, but now I have a nice picture. I can relax. Can you feel it? Can you feel the way this image just, you're like, oh, she was telling me this was a power space, but she's wrong. No, it's nothing. Now I'm okay, I'm feeling good. Why is it? Because this place has a structure that is coding your brain. And you are gonna feel better. You're gonna feel relaxed. You're gonna get like, how do you say that? You're gonna be like power to energy. You're gonna feel better. It's gonna help you have more energy. This kind of image, because you were built to look for those places, and that is because, like I told you, the brain is wired to do that. So if our brain is wired to do that as adults, I had one baby that she went away. So I just have adults with me. If our brain is wired to do that, to look for that, what about kids' brain? Children's brain? How does that? So people in neuroscience and working with spaces, I have found that there's a place in our brain that works just looking at spaces and trying to know the code that spaces have. How do they work? The nature of code of spaces. This is called the PPA, place per more hippocampal area. So it's somewhere in the hippocamp that's going to help you feel better or not in a place. And your brain is going to analyze it in less than what your heart needs to bump once. And what about this image? It has this, when they pass it through computer and analyze, it has exactly the same structure as the savanna ones. Can you imagine? I think he didn't know it. When he did it, he didn't know it. He just did it. But somewhere in our brains, we have that structure. We're looking for it. So you can, without looking for the savanna environment, you can do pictures that make you feel better, that don't have to be the savanna. We don't have all to go back to Africa. So, okay. So this is the first part. Do you get it? Something in our brains works We analyze spaces, and the spaces are not neutral. They have a sense. They have their power places where things can happen. And a lot of people are working with that. That's why malls are constructed the way they are. Because people are thinking about that, okay? What about schools? I have another one that is very interesting. So this is some place suburban in India, in Colombia, in France, with nice grass. Okay, so do you know what we put grass for? Where does this idea of putting grass in homes comes from? Nobody? No, but good guess. Yeah.
Okay,
Kata is saying that maybe it's a savanna need, a reminder.
Is it restoration?
Restoration?
Like when you see green or when you see vegetation, you feel more mentally restored.
Okay.
More calm.
Okay, that's a good one. Someone else?
Is it the need for a place where you can have free space where you can just sit and relax and calm down away from the sort of specific structure?
Okay, good try. Someone else?
I think it's just there. Actually, I never thought why do we have that.
That I love it. Thank you. You never thought about it.
Yeah,
It's just there.
Yeah, it's just there.
Nobody puts it. Somebody puts it there?
I don't know.
No, really? Who puts that there? It comes from French gardens. It comes from the French Revolution. When people wanted to show they were rich, they had a lot of money, they put grass. Because when you put grass, what are you saying? I don't need it. That space. I don't need it to have food. I don't need it for my cows to go around. I don't need it. Because you really have to. I don't know if people have grasses in your house, in your houses, but you really have to take care of it. Really have to take care of it. Really have to take care of it. You don't want to see my garden. It's not, I never take care of it, and I realize that it disappears, it just goes away. So, can you imagine that? We don't know it. And we're using this image of power and the way power works. Nobody's thinking about that when they put grass in their homes. We just put up this. It's just there. It's just like, you know, and nobody, you don't ask. But that has a sense. It has an origin. It was not always there. It's very difficult to have it. And you really have to put water and cut it. So you have this beautiful one. That's, whoa. I don't know how many times do they spend here. So this was just like a little cadeau, like they say in French, a present. So you just realize how we do live with power structures. We do have a lot of power zones that we don't even realize. I'm dressed in red. You know why? You know why?
Because it catches our attention.
Yeah. You know what they know about red? In sports, when you have someone that is dressed in red, they have 60% more chances to win just because they're dressed in red. Can you imagine that? You're gonna feel that I am confident, that I know what I'm saying, even though I say bullshit. Right? You're gonna feel that it's true what I'm saying because I'm dressed in red. Why? Because we developed wet scene to look for foods that were mature. So we think it's good. Anyway. So what about infants? I like this one very much. This is us. This is our brain. Our brain is three times more, has 3 times more connections than the internet today. Imagine all the internet today. In your brain, you have 3 times more connections. And what about in an infant brain? He has 10 times more connections. Okay? 10 times more connections. It doesn't make it faster. It's slower, but it's more precise. And children have at least five times more precise vision than adults. You have seen it. They love to look tiny thing. I don't know if you have children that are under 6. They just love these tiny, tiny dolls, and you're like, oh, wow. And they just pass hours and hours and hours playing with that, and it's beautiful. Because their vision, to get adapted to their environment, they need a vision that has to be very, very powerful. Okay? So, this is not new for you guys. This is where education comes from. So we are supposed to have modern education to produce people the same way we produce objects in factories. Thank you. That's why we put them by grades. If you are 10, you just have to be with all your friends that are 10. That is why we put them in little environments. Can you imagine? How old are you guys? I'm 40. How old are you? So everybody that's not 40 has to go with. Who can stay? No, you have to go. Sorry. You make your own path. But I'm going to say by myself because nobody's 40 though. So. And this is education. That's the way it worked. We spend a lot of time in schools. No matter the kind of school it is. A lot of it. And we create connections between 0 and 12. We have 1 million connections per second that are made. So we really have to be careful at what we are doing with children at that age. Really, really. So can you imagine the way environments affect us, the way space can affect us and kids? A lot of you have seen maybe this video. This baby is gonna spend 10 minutes without crying, just looking at those 6 objects. 10 minutes. Because he wants to know, he wants to understand, he wants to know the pattern inside of it, the colors, why it's different, how do they move. So, we come from babies, we come from Africa, but we spend a lot of time, and this mythical time, where? So maybe that kind of space did something to us. Maybe in some way we really are looking for that kind of form. So why don't we construct like that anymore? We did a long time ago. Because it's very expensive. That's all. When you construct in circles, all the structure you have to put in place is more expensive than to do like here, 4 walls and a ceiling. I just want you to realize that I'm not asking you to go home and construct a room. No, but just know it. Know it that we construct this way because it's cheaper. Thank you. And when people have money, this is in New York. This is the Guggenheim Museum. They do like to construct things like that. It's very interesting because I don't know how it was before you guys got here. This space, where all the chairs were there? No. Everybody put them, nobody would, so why nobody's here? Just, I don't know. And they have made tests about it, and people tend to go and cover the periphery of spaces. Why is that? Because we like to see without being seen. We are worried somebody's gonna eat us. That's the way our brain works. Because in savanna environment,
My name is Pallavi and I come from Mumbai, and I work with parents and families to set up prepared environments in the home.
I'm Pooja and I run the Earth School. Esme and I co-founded it and she told you the rest about the Earth School. I work with Esme. I work with the 6 to 12-year-olds.
can be passed
Behind?
behind and that way.
Yes.
I'm Rahul and I'm from Udaipur, Rajasthan, and I'm part of a youth program, a self-designed youth program called Swaraj University.
Hi, I'm Mohit and I'm also part of the same program. At the same time, I'm part of Muktadhara Multiversity, which is same a multiversity which doesn't give any degrees.
Hi, my name is Neha. I'm also from Udaipur, Rajasthan, mother of a 1-year-old. As of now, stay-at-home mother, trying to explore different learning opportunities, and I also intend to have a learning space for kids in Udaipur.
Hi, I'm Sharmila. I'm from the Earth School with Pooja and Esme.
Maybe we can go back there and then we can go back in front.
Hi, I'm Dina. I'm from Germany. I live close to Berlin. And yeah, I'm studying in university, studying teaching. Yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm interested, especially in democracy.
Can we come back to
Hello, I'm Ramesh. I'm from Gujarat, India. I'm basically into sociocracy training and consulting. Just wanted to explore what the democratic education means as you see.
Hi, I'm Riya. I'm from Bangalore. I'm coming from Bhumi College. I'm an alumni and I'm presently working there as well.
so maybe we can send it back.
Hi, I'm Nita and I work for Earth School. I work for 3 to 6 years children. Hi, I'm Laura. I'm also from Germany and I study special education. So, hey, I'm Lauren. I'm also from Germany. And I'm also a student studying biology and religion to become a teacher. And yeah, by chance I got to join it.
Hi, I'm Priya. I am an architect and yeah, we are looking to create a learning space for children, and that's what got me interested in this session. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dasha. I'm from Ukraine and I run an alternative school for homeschoolers.
Maybe you can come back. No, go on.
Hi, I'm Anusha. I'm from Bangalore and I work for Earth School.
Hi, I'm Arun. I'm kind of just starting out associated with a school that is starting next year that is going to be based on democratic education principles, so I'll be part of an ecosystem. It's called EBU. So that's me.
Hello, my name is Barbara. I come from Spain. I manage in a democratic school in Spain, and now we are growing and we are preparing a new space, a new building. So
Where in Spain?
in Madrid, close to Madrid, yeah. And I'm so interested in spaces for education. Thank you.
Well, in my life, I am an educator, I am a professor, but with the most of the universities. And yeah, I am also interested in the space and how the new, in Indian studies, we have lots of memorizing, or we call it as mugging up. And then I have seen, and I am technically into science studies, and how it was really, instead of understanding, we are simply given mugging up things. As an example, I can say that when we were studying for masters in physics, we had almost 4 pages of uncertainty principle. And when we asked to the professor, he said, "You simply understand." And that is, and then it will come as a derivative. You have to derive it in the exam, and simply we do that. And what is the real meaning and all those things, it is not actually given in many of the Indian systems. So I think it is very important to look forward what is the real way of teaching, educating.
Of power. As adults, our homes are also designed as power over children, because we have, everything pretty much is designed for that. Thank you for that insight.
Yeah, and that's what I was telling you first. Very good reflection. Is that what happens to kids when they go to houses that are built for adults? They feel.
I was wondering that, wouldn't it be a sort of problem that children are sort of growing up in a sterile, confined space, and that's one of the key issues of. So, why is it that we have to create artificial environments where they can feel the things? When I was wondering, wouldn't it be also a thing for more exposure with actual natural environments, or exposure to the real world instead of invoking something in them? Because in some sense it's also drawing a parallel to having control in prisons, but at the same time you're creating freedom in an artificial environment. So at the same time, in some sense, you're molding children to be free instead of them having absolute autonomy in a natural environment.
Super. Okay, perfect. So what is the real world for you?
I mean, when we were talking about this night sky, or when you're talking about restorative images, so just go out there, feel the ground.
So that's the nature world.
Nature, yeah. I mean, that's
it's not the constructions, it's not.
I mean, it could be. Construction is also a part of it, but
yeah.
I mean, wouldn't it also sort of be a thing to, because the ecosystem is far more complex,
yeah.
And to have the textile and visual and sound and everything combined together, wouldn't it be a lot more like a child feeling all the complexity of the things? So wouldn't the building want to create, to expose the child more than, I don't know, the balance? I was just wondering about the balance, basically.
Yeah.
And we felt quite proud that it had made it onto the Daily Show, and it's good to be made fun of. He has some valid points, but we don't necessarily agree with all of them. The guy with the hammer and the helmet was one of the sons of the co-founder, so we felt a bit bad for him, but otherwise. So this is a different angle on the same playground. I won't show you too many videos. This is a 2 of number 3. And this is done by an organization called Scary Mommy. And they have a slightly different angle. They actually like us. But it gives you a good idea of what the space looks like before I give you some details.
Right now you're in my playhouse.
This is little kid side, big kid side. You'll have access to hammers, saws, nails, things like that. If you need tools, you can find them at the shed.
Here, you can build whatever you want. Those rocket ships. It's a super fun place.
My name is Eve Mosher. I'm one of the founders of Playground NYC. as parents, we spend so much time on the playground saying like, be careful, oh don't, you should do it this way. And here we were very adamant about saying step back, let the kids try it.
I apologize for the glitching, but I don't know how to fix it this time. In Denmark, with a book or a mention of the idea in a book called Park Planning, Town and Country. And then the first actual playgrounds that could be identified as such also started in the 40s, also in Denmark. In terms of lineage of the one in New York, the first one showed up in Minneapolis in the United States. And then there were 3 playgrounds in New York in the 70s, but they disappeared after a couple of years. So we were the first ones to sort of restart one after about 40 years, with there having been none. Now, traditionally, they started up in cities, so they were an urban idea for kids that didn't get to go out into the woods or play in the fields or have other opportunities to sort of have a space and move about and create and destroy. So they were an urban phenomenon. Unfortunately, they are now often needed in urban areas as well, because there's a huge decline in the independent mobility that kids have, meaning where they can go without parents. And this is a little study from Ireland, but just the colored circles kind of show that, you know, Noah, who's 11 today, has that little red dot that he can freely move in without his parents. And Sean, in 1973, when he was 11, he had that purple area to move in freely without parents. And that is not true for rural areas as well, where kids just aren't let out for, you know, the fears of either being run over or hurting themselves, or the strange persisting fear of abduction, which doesn't really happen. You're more likely to get hit by a So now they've become, or they've spread across both the US, there's lots in Europe where they initially started out, and a few notable others besides ours, and I'll tell you more about that afterwards, is one of the oldest ones still existing in the US is the one in Berkeley, which is just called Adventure Playground. And it's huge, it has zip lines, it's been being built for ages and ages. But as you can see, there's very permanent structures, which when we look at them, we're like, children didn't make that. So parents are allowed onto that playground, and they're encouraged to sort of supervise their kids on the playground. So you can imagine that a lot of the buildings on there were created by parents rather than kids. Another one, and I love an oddity about this one, this is actually one in Denmark, which still exists at the moment in Copenhagen. The Redover is also, there's lots of permanent structures and big structures, but every kid who enters the playground, the first thing they do, is sort of a tradition, they build a rabbit hatch. So every child has a pet rabbit on the playground, and the first thing they do is build this rabbit hatch, and then part is sort of taking ownership of the space, is taking ownership of their rabbit and caring for their rabbit. Which is a wonderful thing. And this is in a residential area, so all the kids who are there also live around there and can go on their own to take care of the rabbits, and the parents don't have to be involved. Unfortunately, the one, not unfortunately, but the one in Berkeley and the one that we started in New York is what's called a destination playground, so people come from all over the place, which is nice that lots of people get to be there and be part of it. It's sad because it really limits the culture building on the playground, because it's not the same kids over and over that come back. There's a whole association in the US called the North American Adventure Playground Association, and there's quite a few of them now, and more happening. That there's a lot of interaction. There's a conference every year as well.
Because you mentioned sort of gender differences. Do you find any substantial differences in the sort of genders that come to the playground, and is there a difference even without their parents in the way they interact with each other?
Younger kids tend to sort of congregate in gender groups or gendered groups.